wife doesn't want to have intimacy with me unless it is to conceive kids. Greetings everyone. English isn't my first language, so bear with me. I, 26 male, recently got married to my wife Emily, 26 female, about 2 months ago. We both belonged to the same church from birth and gradually developed feelings for each other over the years. We started to communicate more when we turned 20 and got engaged at 24. Emily is deeply religious and never misses a service. I'm religious, but not to the same extent. Our differing levels of devotion have never been an issue. However, throughout our dating and engagement period, Emily maintained her distance. We barely held hands or hugged, and she never gave me a peck on the cheek, a common greeting in our culture. I initially thought she was being respectful, but it did start to bother me. Our wedding night was when things took a surprising turn. We danced and held hands for the first time during the ceremony. At the hotel, we hugged and shared our first kiss. It was just a peck, nothing more. We didn't do anything else that night. We were too tired and just took a shower and went to bed. As we were talking before falling asleep, Emily told me that she didn't want to do anything unless it was to conceive children. I was taken aback and didn't know what to say. I always imagined our wedding night to be special, but I never thought it would turn out like this. I respect that she doesn't want to do anything, but waiting until we decide to have kids, which is at least 2 years away, seems extreme. I love my wife deeply and wouldn't think of leaving her. She's the most respectful and wonderful person I've ever met. During our honeymoon, I found it hard to shake off my disappointment. I've tried to bring up the topic, but in our culture it's considered inappropriate to initiate conversations about intimacy. For the past couple of months I've tried to get her to open up, but she just laughs it off and gives me a peck. I'm starting to feel frustrated because I have a strong desire for intimacy. I don't understand why she's behaving this way, and I'm unsure of how to discuss this with her. Leaving is out of the question, so any advice would be appreciated. Update August 15th, 2023. Hello again, everyone. For those who would like a quick summary, it turns out that Emily is embarrassed and believed it was abnormal to feel arousal. After sharing my story yesterday, I received hundreds of comments suggesting Emily might be a lesbian and was using me to cover up her sexuality. I was taken aback by this possibility, as it had never crossed my mind. We've always been open about our sexualities, and Emily has always been honest about being straight. We both work from home and share a group of friends. I would quickly notice any suspicious behavior. Today I decided to confront Emily, as many of you suggested. We were relaxing after lunch when I brought up the topic of sex and intimacy. She was surprised and confused by my question. It turns out she believed it was abnormal to feel arousal and to have sex unless it was for procreation. I felt bad for her. This was a belief she grew up with, and her friends and environment reinforced it. This conversation was hard for her, so we took a break and had a nap. After waking up, she apologized for not discussing this with me earlier. We agreed to work on physical touch. Emily promised she would answer all my questions, and we decided to seek therapy. This realization was a wake-up call for her. I expressed my resentment at not being consulted on this issue. She apologized and admitted she was afraid of how I would react. We laughed and cried together. Now Emily is sleeping next to me, closer than usual. I feel happier than I did yesterday. There's still a long way to go, but I'm hopeful. Update to September 18th, 2023. Hello everyone, it's been a month since my last update, but I've been preoccupied. I do have some positive news to share. As mentioned in my last update, Emily and I started seeking therapy. We found a center that specializes in various issues, and after explaining our situation, they assigned us a couples therapist. She's been extremely understanding during our sessions and has guided us to better understand our emotions and approach to intimacy. Emily has been attending individual therapy sessions twice a week. It turns out that she has some deep-rooted traumas dating back to her childhood that she needs to work through. She's committed to healing and understands that this process will take a few months. Regarding our physical relationship, our therapist suggested we gradually increase displays of affection. So we spent a week giving each other random hugs, kisses, and cuddles. Emily was initially a bit taken aback, but she got the hang of it and now enjoys the spontaneous displays of affection. With time, we started to become more intimate. We had our first proper makeout session, and things escalated from there. The educational videos recommended by our therapist were really helpful. We even took our first shower together. However, the most significant milestone was when we made love for the first time a couple of days ago. It was a slow and careful process, but we both enjoyed it a lot. It felt like we had reached a new level of connection. We also started going out on dates, trying new restaurants as a change of routine. Our communication has improved immensely, and it feels like the wall that was between us has finally come down. Emily and I have discussed the possibility of using toys, but our therapist feels that it might be too soon. So we have decided to wait for now. We're considering going on a second honeymoon around Christmas to make up for the lackluster first one. It's something we're both excited about. Thank you everyone for your supportive comments and messages. I don't think I'll be needing to update further, but I appreciate everyone who has stuck with me through this journey. Am I the a-hole for leaving my boyfriend when his ex died, leaving him to take care of his kids full time? I, F27, have been dating my boyfriend, M32, for 3 years now. He has a daughter, F8, from a previous relationship. His ex moved to another city with their daughter right after their breakup about 4 years ago. He only saw his daughter during holidays and vacations. I knew about his situation when we started dating, and I was okay with it. I made it clear from the start that I'm not prepared to be a mother. I had to take care of my younger siblings when our parents passed away, and I was only a teenager then. The experience was exhausting, and I've always known that I don't want to be in such a position again. He was fine with my decision, as he himself didn't want more children. We took things slow, and it was just a few months ago that I met his daughter during a vacation trip. We got along well. Things took a sudden turn 2 months ago when his ex passed away in a car accident. His daughter moved in with him, and he asked me to move in with them to help him out for a while. I agreed, but I soon realized that I was falling into the role of a mother again. The kid became very attached to me, and I found myself overwhelmed with the responsibilities. My mental health started deteriorating. My boyfriend was, understandably, also struggling and couldn't provide much help. A week ago, his daughter fell sick and asked me to care for her in the same way her mother used to. It was too much for me. I told my boyfriend that he needed to step up, but he said that the kid needed me more because I was like a mother to her. That was the last straw for me. I didn't want to be trapped into a mother's role again. I told him that I couldn't do this anymore. He accused me of being immature and told me to step up. I realized that if I stayed, I would always be burdened with the responsibilities of a mother. I would always feel inadequate. So I left yesterday and moved in with a friend. My boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend, has been calling me non-stop, accusing me of being selfish. Am I the a-hole? There is no consensus pod on am I the a-hole, but the top comments were mostly NTA. Update post, September 25th, 2023. 2 days later. The past few days have been a whirlwind of emotions and confusion. I couldn't answer all your queries earlier because I was trying to process everything myself. Some comments made me question my decision, especially those that called me heartless. To answer a few questions. 1. I didn't leave without saying goodbye to the child. I told her I needed to go away for work for some time. I informed my ex that I was leaving, but I didn't want to engage in another heated conversation about growing up. 2. I don't usually work from home. My ex asked me to stay home to take care of his daughter, claiming he didn't know how to care for a sick child. Initially I agreed, but he didn't help out even in the evenings. 3. Your assumptions about my ex were mostly correct. He rarely took care of his daughter, always finding an excuse. I felt like a single mom, which wasn't what we agreed upon when I moved in. 4. As the child's father, he got custody. His ex's family didn't want to raise the child as they were already retired. I was able to move back into my old apartment as it was still vacant. Being back in my own space has helped me regain some peace. Yesterday my ex asked to meet. We had a long talk where he apologized for his behavior and admitted that he was scared and didn't know how to be a full-time dad. I understood his fear, but I reiterated that I couldn't be a mother to his child. I offered to help him, but within certain boundaries. He understood my decision and asked if I could still be a part of their lives. I agreed to visit occasionally as a friend, but I wouldn't move back in or play the role of a stepmom. When he asked if we were breaking up, I told him I was uncertain. I still love him, but I know we can't have a future together. All his words and actions are still fresh in my mind, and I can't commit to a relationship with him right now. I visited them this morning and the child asked when I was coming back. I told her that I have my own home to take care of, but I would visit as often as I can. She seemed to understand and asked if I could still be her friend. I agreed. I'm hoping this will work out for the best. Thank you all for your advice and different perspectives. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my fiancé for being in love with another woman? My partner and I recently went on a trip to visit one of his close friends. Let's call her Sarah. It was my first time meeting her, as we started dating during the pandemic and hadn't been able to socialize much. The trip itself was enjoyable, but I couldn't help but notice the strong bond between my partner and Sarah. They seemed to have a deep connection, and it made me feel a bit insecure. On our way back home, as we were saying our goodbyes, my partner told Sarah that he loved her, and she responded with, "I love you too." I was taken aback and hurt by this, as I had never heard him express those words to any of his other friends. The whole situation left me feeling upset and confused. When we got home, I confronted my partner about it, and expressed how hurt I was that he would say "I love you" to another woman in front of me. He tried to reassure me, explaining that their love was purely platonic and that Sarah was one of his closest friends. He also admitted that he had developed romantic feelings for her in the past, but those feelings were not reciprocated, and he had moved on from them when we started dating. I reacted impulsively and told him that I didn't want Sarah at our wedding. However, he explained that he had already asked her to be one of his groomsmen, without consulting me first. This made me even more upset, and in the heat of the moment I suggested that if he loved her so much, he should marry her instead. I laughed and decided to stay with my family. Since then, my partner has been trying to reach out and communicate, but I've been avoiding him. Some of my friends think I may have overreacted, and I'm starting to question my own actions. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my fiancé over this? Update. After reading the responses on my original post, I realized that I may have overreacted and let my insecurities get the best of me. I have a history of being cheated on, which likely contributed to my strong reaction. I finally decided to respond to my partner's attempts to reach out, and we agreed to have a conversation. During our talk, I apologized for my behavior and acknowledged that I needed to work on my insecurities and trust issues. I also expressed that I felt like a third wheel during the trip, which made me feel out of place. My partner agreed that therapy would be a helpful step for both of us. After our conversation, I took some time to reflect on my thoughts and emotions. I decided to reach out to Sarah and apologize for my behavior towards her. I messaged her, expressing my regret and explaining that I was going to seek therapy to address my insecurities. I also reassured her that I didn't hold any resentment towards her for my partner's past feelings. To my surprise, Sarah replied and seemed genuinely confused. She explained that she had always seen their relationship as a sibling-like bond, and had no idea about my partner's past feelings for her. She even mentioned that she was aromantic and didn't experience romantic connections. Feeling even more confused and upset, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. I left my phone behind to avoid distractions. When I returned, I discovered numerous missed calls and messages from my partner, urging me to talk to him as soon as possible. I mustered the courage to call him back, and he immediately started yelling, asking why I had talked to Sarah and shared our conversation. I explained that I thought it was the right thing to do and that I owed her an apology. It turns out that Sarah had confronted my partner after our conversation, leading him to admit the truth. He confessed that his feelings for Sarah had never completely disappeared, but he assured me that he loved me more and wanted to marry me. He wanted Sarah to be a part of his life, which is why he had asked her to be his best man. This revelation left me feeling exhausted and unsure about everything. I told him that I needed time to process everything and ended the call. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling lost and scared. Thankfully, my mother has been incredibly supportive, and I have moved back in with her while I figure out my next steps. In the end, I made the difficult decision to call off the engagement. The lies and the uncertainty about my partner's feelings were too much for me to handle. Although he was apologetic, I couldn't trust him anymore. However, I do not harbor any hatred towards him. Love can be complicated, and sometimes it's hard to let go of certain feelings. I wish him the best, but I know that moving forward without him is the right choice for me. Despite the pain and confusion, I am finding solace in my current situation. My mother's support has been invaluable, and I am grateful for the opportunity to rebuild my life. I plan to continue with therapy to work on my own insecurities and ensure that my past experiences don't negatively impact future relationships. I'm also exploring new hobbies and interests, such as creative writing, which brings me joy and helps me heal. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my son's teacher and making her cry? Last Thursday, I, 36M, got a call from my son's school telling me I needed to come and collect him because he had passed out during class. My son has passed out a good few times before, so we've made sure he knows what to do when he starts to feel faint to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. However, when I arrived at the school, my son was holding an ice pack to his head. When I asked about it, the nurse told me he had hit his head when he fell. I wondered why he hadn't laid down like we taught him to do. I brushed it off and decided to ask him about it later, as he was still kind of out of it. The next day I asked him about it, and what he told me made my blood boil. Apparently when my son had first started to feel like he was going to pass out, he tried to tell his teacher. When he stood up to talk to her, he was immediately yelled at to sit back down. The next time he tried to tell her, she told him that he didn't look sick, so he wasn't allowed to go to the nurse's office. Then his class was doing an activity that required standing for practically the rest of the lesson. Before the activity started, my son yet again told this teacher that he felt like he was going to pass out and asked if he could sit the activity out. The teacher responded by yelling at him, claiming he was just being lazy and was making excuses. My son's friend was getting worried about him, so he told the teacher, who then started yelling at his friend, accusing them both of trying to get out of lesson. Not even a minute later, my son passed out, and according to his friend and a couple other classmates, she acted very shocked, as if she hadn't been ignoring him trying to tell her how he felt for the last 5 minutes. I'm extremely worried about the impact this will have on my son, as when the fainting first started, he didn't tell any of his teachers as he was scared that they were going to yell at him. This resulted in quite a few injuries from falling. It has taken a while for him to start telling them when he's feeling faint, and I'm afraid this incident will cause him to stop asking, and he will hurt himself. I had wanted to go down to the school that day, but my son had stayed off and my wife wasn't home from work yet. The following Monday, I arranged an appointment with the principal. After I explained what had happened, he called in my son's teacher, who then tried to deny the fact that he ever told her anything, and he had just randomly collapsed. This is where I may be the a-hole. By this point I was pissed. I began to scream at her, yelling about how my son could have gotten hurt. I was so pissed I hadn't even noticed that she'd started to cry. By that point I was asked to leave by the principal. My wife and some of my friends think I'm in the right, but my parents and the other half of my friends think I went too far. I don't know about this one. What do you guys think? Am I the a-hole? Edit. I'm just going to answer some frequently asked questions that the answers weren't included in the original post. 1. We are not in the US, so a 504 plan is not in place. However, we do have something similar too. My son is in the middle of getting a diagnosis. 3. My son is 13, and I would say he's a fairly well-behaved kid, only sometimes getting in trouble for stupid shit that 13-year-old boys do. He usually stops after he gets a verbal warning. We've never had any major issues with his behavior. 4. Yes, the teacher was aware of his episode's update. The new school year starts tomorrow, and we've just been notified that this teacher will not be returning for the new school year. The email we received claimed she has decided to move on to new opportunities. However, me and my wife have had a talk with some other parents, and unsurprisingly, that is not the case. Apparently, my son was not the first or last student she has done this to. This teacher is notorious for never letting anyone leave her classroom for anything unless she can physically see something wrong with them. Even then, there has been a few instances when she's told students having things like eczema flare-ups to wait until the end of class. She even tried to do the same thing to my son when he was having another episode. Luckily, since the last incident, he's learned to ignore her, and him and his friend went down to the nurse despite what she said. At the beginning of summer, my wife got a call from one of the other mothers who explained that the teacher had tried to do the same thing to her daughter. As it turns out, she had a friend on the school board and is very well liked by all parents and staff. She arranged a meeting with the teacher, the principal, the school board, and the superintendent to discuss this teacher's behavior. Before the meeting, she spent ages compiling evidence against this teacher. She managed to get the medical forms of the students she'd denied access to the nurse too, with permission from the parents of course. She somehow got all the reports of her behavior towards students. She got statements from students, parents, and other members of staff. She even got a couple students who had more serious incidents to come to the meeting with their parents and recount what had happened. We couldn't be there since we were going on vacation. But both my son and his friend filmed them telling what happened, and we it to the mother to play at the meeting. When it finally came time for the meeting, the teacher had not anticipated that the mother would be so prepared, and after an hour in the meeting, the teacher was finally fired after 6 years of mistreating students. If you're wondering how she kept her job so long, I was too. Turns out she was a Nepo hire. The principal is her uncle. For all those wondering how my son is doing, he's doing a bit better, though his episodes have been happening more frequently as of late. Thank you all for the advice and well wished on the original post. Salt does seem to help sometimes. Am I the a-hole for wanting a child-free ceremony? I am a 31M and am set to marry my wonderful fiancé, 29F, in January of 2024. We are in the midst of sorting out the wedding guest list. To give you some context, I have 3 siblings. Luke, 38M, who is married to Lucy, 35F, with 2 kids. Mike, 35M, who is married to Stella, 29F, also with 2 kids. And Dan, 33M, who is married to Jenny, 31F, who are child-free. My fiancé has a brother, Ben, 23M, who isn't married but has 1 kid. And 1 sister, Lisa, 21F, who has a boyfriend, Tom, 23M, and they have 1 child. All of the kids are 7 and under. All of our family members are in the wedding party, with Luke serving as my best man. Alongside this, we have several friends who are married with children as well. All in all, there are 23 children amongst our family and friends, and they are all lovely kids, but they present a wide array of energy levels and behaviors. So, when planning, my fiancé and I decided that while it would be challenging to ask our guests to leave all of their kids at home, we'd instead like to have a child-free ceremony. We provide a childcare agency to watch the kids during the ceremony and part of the reception, introduction, first dance, speeches, etc. Then allow them to join after all of that is done. We were thinking of covering 3 hours of the wedding. Then the rest of the reception, the kids could join us all and have fun. We presented the ideas to our families and friends, and while everyone has had a variety of reactions, Lucy is particularly upset with us. She called me saying it's not fair that her kids can't attend the whole wedding, and asked why we wouldn't want kids at the ceremony. I explained that the ceremony was the most important part to us, and that we didn't want any disruptions like crying or kids complaining they're bored or anything like that. She insisted that wouldn't happen because her kids are perfect angels. While I do agree her kids are well behaved most of the time, I said it's still 23 kids at a ceremony, and one is bound to cry or make noise, and we didn't want that interrupting our vows. Plus, I didn't want to single out anyone's kids by saying some were invited and some weren't, so we thought this was the best option. Apparently she got upset because she said, if her kids can't attend every part of the wedding, then she and her kids won't be attending at all. I didn't yell, but I was getting upset because Luke loves his wife, and that would put him in a terrible spot if his wife didn't attend. I asked her to understand that we're trying to figure this out, and she said I'm an a-hole for even considering anything child-free and excluding their kids from our ceremony over something stupid, and hung up on me. My fiancé and I are in 100% agreement with this, and everyone else in the bridal party isn't as hostile about it, so I'm asking Ada for wanting a child-free ceremony. Update. Firstly, thank you everyone. My fiancé and I read through all the comments and got some amazing insights and perspectives. It really helped us put our wedding into perspective and brought us even closer as a couple. We also took the time to read other stories about children attending weddings, and let me tell you, those stories were quite eye-opening. After considering all the advice and reflecting on our own feelings, we decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation with our family and friends to get their thoughts on the matter. Surprisingly, the only people who expressed any concern about the child-free ceremony were Luke and Lucy. Everyone else seemed genuinely excited about the idea of having a child-free night, and even Mike mentioned that it might be better to save the cost of wedding childcare, since most of our guests won't be bringing their kids. With this newfound information, we decided to have dinner at Luke and Lucy's house to discuss the matter further. As we arrived, their kids were playing in the living room, but Lucy quickly sent them upstairs. We engaged in some light conversation, and then I brought up the fact that their kids would be the only ones attending the wedding. I reassured them that we were still willing to cover the cost of a babysitter for just their 2 kids. Lucy immediately became defensive, insisting once again that her kids were perfect angels, and that inviting them wouldn't ruin our special day. However, just as she was making her point, we heard a commotion upstairs. Curious, I asked, "What are they doing up there?" Lucy rolled her eyes, but Luke called for the kids to come downstairs. And when they appeared, both of them were completely naked with red and black marks on their faces. It turns out they were playing a game of Survivor, and had gotten a bit carried away. At that moment, my fiancé and I struggled to contain our laughter, and even Luke had a hard time stifling his own chuckles. Lucy, clearly annoyed, instructed the kids to clean up and put on their pajamas. I couldn't help but joke, "Well, angels are usually naked in paintings," which caused both Luke and my fiancé to burst into laughter. Lucy, still visibly frustrated, walked off to the kitchen to grab a glass of wine. After a moment of silence, she finally said, Fine, we'll come. But you're covering a babysitter for the night instead of wedding childcare. If our kids can't come to the ceremony, then I'd rather they just stay home. But we'll come. Now some might argue that this is an unfair request, but personally I would rather spend $200 on a one-night babysitter than $1,000 on wedding childcare. But that's a matter for another day. For now, I'm just grateful that we were able to find a compromise that works for everyone. Once again, thank you all for your amazing advice and support. We couldn't be more excited to walk down the aisle and start this new chapter in our lives. And who knows, maybe we'll even have a few hilarious stories to share from the wedding. Am I the a-hole for refusing to stop kissing my own baby? My husband, Jake, and I have recently been blessed with a beautiful son named Eli. Eli, now just 8 weeks old, is the first child for both of us, as well as the first grandchild on either side of our families. Naturally, everyone is excited and eager to shower him with love. However, following our pediatrician's advice, we decided to implement a strict rule. No one other than Jake and I were allowed to kiss Eli for the first 14 weeks of his life. This was primarily to protect our newborn's still developing immune system. Both our families were informed of this rule, and though there were a few disappointed sighs, everyone seemed to accept it. My mother-in-law Diane was particularly dismayed. She's always been a very affectionate person. One Sunday we visited Diane's house for a family gathering. After a round of breastfeeding, Eli had drifted off into a peaceful sleep in my arms. Instinctively, I leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead, whispering a soft lullaby as I settled him against my chest. Diane, who had been watching from the other side of the room, immediately stood up. With an unmistakably passive-aggressive tone, she said, "Oh, what a relief. I thought we weren't allowed to kiss Eli. Has your pediatrician changed his mind?" Bewildered, I clarified that the pediatrician's advice had not changed. The rules still applied to everyone except Jake and me. Diane, however, accused me of being misleading and hypocritical, claiming that I had initially said no one can kiss Eli, rather than no one but Jake and I can kiss Eli. Despite my attempts at explaining, the conversation spiraled into a heated argument. Eventually, I had enough. I rose from my seat, cradling Eli against me, and excused myself to the guest room where I could calm down and let Eli continue his nap in peace. A while later, Diane came into the room, visibly calmer. She apologized, saying she had reacted out of confusion and disappointment. However, she then asked if I could refrain from kissing Eli in her presence until she was also allowed to do so. She claimed it was hurtful to watch me kiss him when she couldn't. I empathized with her frustration. I knew how strong the maternal and grandmotherly instincts could be, but I found the request to be unreasonable. I was not going to stop expressing my love for my own child for the sake of someone else's feelings. Following our conversation, Diane has labeled me as disrespectful and hypocritical, even recruiting my sister-in-law to her side. Am I the a-hole in this story? My husband deserted me without a word. I'm still in shock from everything that has happened and just need an outlet to let it all out. My husband and I have been going through a tough patch for the past year after he lost his job. We had to move into a small apartment, and I've been working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. He hasn't found work since then. When he told me last Wednesday that he had a job interview, I was ecstatic. He left early in the morning, taking both our cars since one needed to be dropped at the workshop. He texted me around noon saying that he got the job and had to fill out some paperwork, and he would be home by evening. But when I checked our joint account later that afternoon, I noticed several big expenses in the next town over. Something didn't seem right. Evening turned into night and he still wasn't home. He wasn't answering my calls or texts, and I soon realized that he had blocked me on all platforms. He had both our cars, our bank cards, and even my passport. Before I could cancel the cards, he had drained our joint account. I managed to secure a new account and have been staying with a friend temporarily, but I can't impose on her generosity for too long. I'm hoping my new cards arrive soon and I can find a small place for myself. I have a salary coming in next week, but I'm not sure how to stretch it until then. From what I've gathered, my husband is with another woman. He contacted his sister briefly to say he was okay, but didn't give any reason for his actions. We've been together for 20 years and I thought we were working through our issues. I just can't comprehend why he left me this way, with no money, no car, and no explanation. It's heartbreaking. I could only guess that he found someone else who could take care of him better than I did. But thank you for letting me air out my feelings. Update. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for their kind words and encouragement. My pets and I have found a temporary place to stay. My new bank card should be arriving soon. With my salary next week, I've found a small studio apartment I can move into. It's tiny, but it has everything I need. I'm also seeking legal advice to understand my options. I feel confident that I can manage on my own. I'm determined not to let him back into my life no matter what he says. His words are for my lawyer to handle now. Update. I wanted to provide another update on my situation. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but things are slowly starting to fall into place. I still haven't heard from my husband, and quite honestly, I don't want to. I've been focusing on rebuilding my life and taking care of myself. I'm happy to share that I and my furry companions have moved into our new apartment. It's not much, but it's a fresh start. I've managed to find some furniture and make it feel like home. It's amazing how a little bit of stability can uplift your spirits. I've been taking steps to ensure my safety and protect my finances. I've filed for legal separation and have been working closely with my lawyer to navigate the process. It's empowering to take control of my own life and not let his actions define me. I want to express my deepest gratitude for all the support and kindness I've received from this community. Your words have given me strength and hope during this challenging time. I've also connected with others who have gone through similar experiences, and it's comforting to know that I'm not alone. Update. I thought my previous update would be the last, but I wanted to provide closure to those who have been following my story. Today I met with my lawyer to discuss the next steps and finalize the legal proceedings. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders knowing that I'm taking the necessary steps to protect myself. In a surprising turn of events, I did receive an email from my husband. It was a short message asking how I was doing and apologizing. It took a lot of strength, but I decided not to respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer and created filters to send any future messages from him directly to the trash. I'm determined to move forward and not allow him to disrupt my healing process. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who have supported me throughout this journey. Your kindness, advice, and empathy have made a world of difference. I still have a long road ahead, but I know I have the strength and resilience to overcome any obstacles that come my way. Thank you all for being the source of light in my life during these dark times. Am I the a-hole for wanting to leave my girlfriend of 5 years, knowing she may be proposing soon? I, 26 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 24 female, for about 5 years now. This is kind of a complicated story, so bear with me. We started dating in my final year of college back in 2018. Everything was going great. It felt like we were meant to be. Until the pandemic hit in 2020, and we both had to move back to our parents' homes to finish our studies online. My girlfriend then pursued her master's degree in psychology, while I started working remotely. To save up, we both lived with our parents, who live roughly 2 hours apart from each other. The understanding was that we'd move in together after her graduation in May 2023. Here's where the problem starts. I had an inkling that she was planning to propose soon, based on her behavior and subtle hints dropped. She had previously mentioned that she'd like to have my parents' blessings before proposing, and she initiated a conversation with them back in October 2022. Since then, she hasn't brought up the topic again, despite having visited my home a couple of times. She is an only child and has always been very close with her parents, especially her father, who has a history of creating divisions between us. She has now started expressing concerns about leaving her parents alone, especially since they rely on her for a lot of emotional support. The most concerning incident, however, was a conversation she had with my parents about her plans to propose. She mentioned that she was scared of commitment and sacrifice, explaining that she enjoyed her personal time and was worried about giving it up for marriage or family responsibilities. This was a shock to me, as she had never expressed such sentiments before moving back with her parents. She seems very comfortable with her current life and doesn't want to change it. But I do. I'm ready to move forward, to start a family, and to make sacrifices for my loved ones. I had always imagined doing this with her, but now I'm not so sure anymore. I don't know how to handle this situation. I'm stressed, confused, and heartbroken. I had envisioned a happy and exciting future with her, but now I'm stuck at a crossroads, uncertain about my next steps. This is supposed to be a thrilling and hopeful time in my life, but it has become a source of dread and anxiety. I want to be fair to her and to myself, but I'm not sure how to navigate this situation. Edit. The main issue isn't about her proposing. If she had reservations about marriage or was not ready, she should tell me. But she hasn't said anything to me, and whenever I ask, she just brushes it off and says she wants to marry me. My main concern is her inconsistency. She says one thing but doesn't demonstrate it through her actions. I've tried to talk to her about this, but she only promises to try to improve. As for her personal time, I've always tried not to be controlling about how she spends her free time. I've been hurt in past relationships for being too controlling, so I'm very conscious of not crossing that line. I've always supported her hobbies and interests even if they're not really my thing. Update. September 6th, 2023. Nearly 5 months later. It took me 4 months, but I finally did it. I ended the relationship. Over the past 4 months, all our relationship consisted of was empty promises and unfulfilled plans. There was a lot of manipulation and emotional abuse. Anytime I tried to discuss serious issues, for example, where to live, finances, kids, etc., she dismissed it as unimportant. This showed me that she wasn't planning for our future together. Ironically, her parents had more insight into her financial situation than I did. When I confronted them about it, they showed me a slew of loans she had taken out and not repaid since her graduation 2 years ago. And she had 0 expenses. This was the last straw for me. It took a lot of courage to end things, especially given her father's constant interference. But I managed to do it last weekend, and boy, did I dodge a bullet. The entire conversation was emotionally charged and manipulative. She accused me of not wanting her to be happy, of cheating, and even tried to bribe me with gifts to stay with her. When I told her parents about the breakup, they essentially showed me the door. This was disheartening, but ultimately, I knew I had made the right decision. I'm currently dealing with a mix of sadness and anxiety, having left the comfort of a long-term relationship and venturing into the unknown. But I also feel a sense of relief and liberation. I'm in my mid-20s and I have a promising career ahead of me. I have supportive friends and family who have been by my side throughout this ordeal. I'm hopeful that in time I'll heal and find someone who truly values and respects me. For now though, I'm taking some time for myself. I'm going to focus on my career, my personal growth, and my happiness. I've learned a lot from this relationship, about myself, about what I want in a partner, and about the importance of open and honest communication. I'm hopeful for the future and I'm ready to embrace whatever comes my way. First time I dressed up for a double date and my friend didn't like it. My friend Alex asked me to join him for a double date with Lily and her friend Kate. Alex had scored a date with Lily, but she wanted to convert it to a double date as she wanted to introduce Kate to the dating environment in a less intimidating way. I was excited, but Kate was a bit skeptical about the idea of me being her date, but agreed because she was more interested in the experience rather than the person. Alex and I are very different. He's the outgoing and sporty type while I'm the introverted and a bit on the heavier side. It doesn't help that I'm losing my hair at this age. Whenever I've met Kate at college, I've been in my usual clothes. I wear the same kind of clothes every day, a sort of self-imposed uniform. So the day before the date, I decided to get a fresh haircut, trimmed my beard, and felt pretty confident about my look. I also decided to wear my special occasion clothes. The day of the double date arrived. I was a bit late, but only by a few minutes. Alex was texting me frantically until I showed up holding a sunflower for Kate. I'm a bit cheesy, but I thought it would be a nice gesture. Alex seemed annoyed for some reason. Lily looked surprised, but Kate, she had a big smile on her face and her eyes seemed to sparkle. We started our date and Kate and I were getting along really well. We decided to go to the movies before grabbing some burgers. Kate's suggestion. We did get along, but not enough to say I was attracted to her more than a friend. Maybe a second date, just the two of us, would be a good idea. Throughout the date, I noticed Alex giving me odd glances and Lily smiling subtly. I knew Lily was happy to see Kate enjoying, but I couldn't understand why Alex was acting so strange. After the date, Alex vented out his frustration on me. He accused me of being too cheesy for bringing Kate a sunflower, that I was there to accompany Kate, not to steal his thunder. He said I was overdressed. I was just wearing a black shirt, a denim jacket, and jeans with my Vans. He also accused me of stealing the spotlight from him. I was just spending time with Kate, shared a meal with her, and even took her to her favorite burger joint. He was there, and Lily was fully supportive of our plans. I barely interacted with Lily. He had all the opportunity to impress her. It wasn't my fault Lily was more interested in seeing her friend happy. Update. Many of you wanted an update, so here it is. Starting with Alex. I talked to him about what happened and how it made me feel, and he offered an apology. It felt a bit forced, but over the past 2 weeks, he has shown some changes. I suggested that he should actually try to connect with his dates, and he seems to be taking it seriously. He's still the same Alex, but at least he's making an effort. As for Lily, we've started hanging out, but I don't know much about what happened between her and Alex. All I know is that it didn't work out between them, which I'm fine with. Now for Kate. I asked her out for another date, just the two of us, and she said yes with a big smile. We went to the jazz club and we had a fantastic time. I got home late that night, totally exhausted, but it was a night filled with firsts. We really hit it off, much to my surprise. After a few drinks, she opened up and we spent hours talking. We've had 2 more dates since then and we're officially dating now. I showed her my last post and she found all your responses amusing. I'm divorcing my husband because of the gifts he gives me. I met my husband almost 7 years ago and we tied the knot 4 years back. He's an incredible person and I honestly love him deeply. Our issues started a couple of years back when his work stress began affecting our relationship. We decided to try couples therapy to get things back on track. Our therapist suggested we try doing things for each other, like planning surprise dates or giving thoughtful gifts. Initially, the gift giving was wonderful. He'd present me with beautiful dresses and handbags from my favorite brands. Our bond was improving and we were falling in love all over again. Then one day he gave me a personalized bracelet with his name on it. I was touched at first and wore it all the time. He expressed that if I didn't wear it, it would mean I didn't value him since it was costly and had his name on it. Later, he gifted me a foot massager. I usually massaged his feet after a long day at work, though I didn't mind doing it. I didn't enjoy it as it strained my hands. I told him I wouldn't do it daily, so he got me a foot massager to prevent hand strain. He began buying me high-end baking equipment, recipe books, and chic aprons, implying I should bake more. He got me noise-canceling headphones so he could play his drums without me asking him to lower the volume. He even gifted me a knitting kit so I could mend his clothes. When I confronted him, he lashed out at me, claiming I should be grateful for his presence. I countered that his gifts were actually for his benefit, not mine. He lost his temper, started calling me names and throwing things around, then left the house in a rage. I'd never seen him so angry, but it clarified the path our marriage was heading down. I was in tears, knowing what I had to do when he returned. Edit. Thank you for all the kind words and understanding. I'd like to clarify a few things before giving a small update. I too gave him gifts. He's the type who doesn't show much enthusiasm about things and has often said he doesn't enjoy receiving gifts. However, I've given him golf gear, his hobby, and quality clothing from labels he likes. Just because I didn't mention my gestures doesn't mean I'm ungrateful or a bad wife. I also reject the excuse that he's just a man. My husband had never shouted at me like that before, and it wasn't just yelling. He was throwing things and name-calling. I stayed calm during arguments and never raised my voice at him. I tried to pacify him. Update. I've decided to proceed with the divorce. He didn't come home until the next morning and didn't speak to me all day until I told him we were getting divorced. He didn't protest but said I was making a mistake. A close friend of mine is a divorce lawyer and she has advised me to avoid any contact with him. Currently, I am staying with my cousin while we sort out the details. I apologize if the update isn't as dramatic, and it will probably be the only one I'll post. However, I'm really grateful for all the supportive comments. They have really helped me see things from a different perspective. Am I the a-hole for no longer seeing a girl because she's trans? I'm a 29 male who recently started seeing a woman I met at my local gym. She was stunning and we immediately clicked. We went for coffee once, then dinner twice. It was during the third outing that she shared with me that she was a trans woman. I maintained my composure, although I was surprised, and ended the night on a polite note, but I became distant afterwards. A couple of days later, she sent me a heartfelt message expressing her feelings for me and asking why I was acting distant. I tried to explain to her that it wasn't personal, but the fact that she was born a male made it difficult for me to continue seeing her. She felt hurt and accused me of being transphobic, stating that her past shouldn't matter as she is a woman now. My buddies have mixed reactions, with some saying I did nothing wrong and others arguing that my reaction was insensitive since she has undergone the transition. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for telling my wife nobody cares about her small business? My wife, 27F, owns an Etsy shop where she sells handmade jewelry. She has some real talent and the jewelry she sells is genuinely very nice and high quality. She gets a surprising amount of sales on there too, and has great reviews. The issue is that everywhere we go, every conversation she has, she slips in something about her shop and tries to promote it. Talking to a friend, she'll casually mention a big sale she made or a custom order she got, and not very subtly mention that she'd give her friend a coupon or something similar. Talking to our waiter, she'll mention that she has a pair of earrings on her shop that would complement their eyes. Talking to someone online, she'll somehow manage to say, as the owner of a small business, she literally cannot have a conversation anywhere with anyone without trying to sell them her jewelry. The other day was a family member's birthday, and they were having a decently sized get-together with just other family members and a few close friends. I went with my wife, and she's a pretty social person, even outside of promoting her shop, so she was quickly making conversation with my family. Of course, not 5 minutes later, she was showing someone the bracelet she had on that she made and mentioning that she sells them, and talking about how, since they were family, she would happily give them a 25% discount. She probably had that exact same conversation with at least 5 people during the 2 hours we were there. As soon as we left, I spoke to her and said she needs to quit doing that. I told her if people were actually interested, they would ask her about her store, but not every single person she talks to wants or needs to hear about her art. She got upset and said that she just wants to spread her product and doesn't see what she's doing wrong, and hasn't spoken to me much since. I feel like I'm the asshole, since I will admit I had a pretty harsh tone and could have been a lot nicer during that conversation. Plus, I get she's just trying to sell her products even if it gets obnoxious. Am I the a-hole? My brother keeps trying to call me. He's been dead for 7 years. My brother Jake died when he was 25 and I was 21. He was a soldier, lost too soon in a tragic battlefield accident. I was devastated. I had always been passionate about music, and Jake had always encouraged me to pursue my dreams. So I did. I chased my dream of becoming a music producer to honor my brother. By the time I was 28, I had a beautiful wife and a successful career in the music industry. Life was going well until I received a strange call. An unknown number flashed on my screen. Curiosity piqued, I picked up the call. All I heard was silence. After repeating hello a few times, the call ended. I brushed it off as a wrong number. Days later, I received another call from the same unknown number. This time I decided not to answer. In an attempt to trace the caller, I ran a Google search for the number. However, nothing turned up. The following week, while working late at the studio, I received yet another call. Without checking the caller ID, I assumed it was my wife and answered. "Hey babe, I'll be home late." To my surprise, a voice responded. "Andy, is that you?" I froze. The voice sounded eerily similar to Jake's. I managed to utter his name in disbelief, and he affirmed it was him. He urged me to meet him. I was devastated and angry. I demanded a proof that it was him. He then shared a secret only he and I knew about. The lyrics of a song we wrote together as kids. I was shocked. I rushed home, recounted the conversation to my wife. She was skeptical, thinking it was a cruel prank. Despite the uncanny resemblance, I too had my doubts. Jake and I texted back and forth for a few days. He suggested we meet up in a secluded park late at night. My wife was adamantly against it and convinced me not to go. Instead, she suggested we inform the police about the strange calls. As the agreed meeting time approached, I was about to message Jake to tell him I wouldn't be able to make it, but my wife suggested we wait until a few minutes after the meeting time to send the message. We later found out from the police that a man had been arrested in the same park that night, impersonating missing or deceased individuals to lure their loved ones. I was relieved that I had not fallen into his trap. However, I was also filled with guilt and sorrow for the others who had not been as fortunate. The experience served as a harsh reminder of the loss of my brother. My father came home, but he isn't my father. My father, 56M, left home to go fishing one day. I, 21M, had insisted he keep his location enabled on his phone, considering there had been several disappearances in our small town lately. He left in the morning, promising to be back by dinner. As the day went on, I checked his location occasionally, noticing he was at the local fishing spot. However, around 7 p.m., I saw his location change. He was no longer at the lake, but in the middle of the ocean. I was concerned, but thought it was just a glitch in the app. After a couple of hours, my dad came back home. He was acting strange, not his warm, jovial self, but rather cold and distant. I checked his location again, and it was still showing him in the middle of the ocean. I decided to investigate, telling my dad I was going to a party. Instead, I went to the local fisherman, 40M, who was my dad's friend, and asked him about my father's whereabouts. He said my dad left the fishing spot around noon. The next day, my friend, a local mechanic and stunt biker, 28M, agreed to help me out. We rode our motorcycles to the coast, the closest point to the location my father's phone was showing. It was a restricted area, marked with a big "Do Not Enter" sign, but we ignored it. We arrived at a large, abandoned-looking facility surrounded by high fences and security cameras. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. We somehow managed to get inside the building. The first floor was an old medical ward. The second floor was filled with aged pharmaceuticals. And the third floor was inaccessible due to the collapsed roof. We found a modern working elevator. On the control panel there was a code written, 888882. We punched in the code and the elevator started to descend. The elevator opened to a futuristic floor. It was like stepping into a sci-fi movie. In one of the rooms, there was a humanoid figure, and I heard my father's voice warning me not to look at it directly, or it would be the end for us. My friend unfortunately didn't heed the warning and looked right at it, collapsing onto the floor immediately. A few moments later I heard footsteps. A group of people in white hazmat suits came in, speaking to the humanoid figure in hushed tones that were difficult to comprehend. All I could make out were the letters XR and some numbers. Soon after, everything went black. When I came to, I was in a stark white room. I was told I was now subject 7L12 and was under quarantine. They asked me questions, how I found the place, who the other person was, what else I knew. I told them everything, about my father's strange behavior, about his phone's location, the other father at home. Soon after, I blacked out again. When I woke up, it was as if nothing had happened. My father was about to leave for his fishing trip again. Only this time, when he returned, he was his usual warm self, not the cold, distant figure I had encountered before. I'm a surgeon. My patients have been exhibiting symptoms of parasites. As an orthopedic surgeon, I was no stranger to the uncanny and bizarre. But nothing prepared me for the outbreak that swept through our hospital, turning an ordinary day into a nightmare. It was a simple knee replacement surgery. The patient was an elderly man complaining of constant pain in his joints. He was cheerful and optimistic about the procedure, hoping it would help him get back to his daily walks. During the operation, I made the first incision. Beneath the skin and muscle, however, I didn't find the worn-out joint I expected. Instead, I found a writhing mass of tiny black spiders flooding out from the open wound. The sight of it sent shivers down my spine, turning my stomach. Panic erupted in the operating room. My surgical assistant fainted while the anesthetist stumbled back in shock, knocking over trays of surgical tools. Time of death, 11:17 a.m., I declared, voice shaking. Call in the bio team immediately. The hazmat team arrived shortly, shrouded in their ominous yellow suits. They sealed off the room, dousing it with chemicals to contain the strange infestation. Twice in 1 week on dock, one of them, a stocky man named Max, handed me a white biosuit like his. I wish it were under better circumstances, Max, I replied, pulling on the suit. Any idea where these spiders are coming from? His shrug was barely visible under his suit. Higher-ups aren't saying much. As we conversed, a shriek echoed from the hallway. I turned to see my surgical nurse, her hazmat suit teeming with spiders. They crawled from her eyes and mouth, a grotesque sight that made me feel sick. She fell to the floor, convulsing as the spiders swarmed over her. Max looked at me, grim. Looks like you need a new nurse, I nodded, heart pounding. She was a good one. As the bio team wheeled away the bodies, I realized the hazmat suits weren't to protect us from the spiders. They were to contain them should we become infected. Max led me to a sterile white chamber with a single shower head. I stripped down, discomforted by the decontamination process, but it was necessary to ensure the safety of the hospital. As I showered in the misty blue gas, I pondered over the outbreak. I hoped it would end soon for everyone's sake. Max left me in isolation with a fresh set of scrubs in my phone. Alone, I turned to the internet to distract myself, preparing for a long 24 hours. But as I scrolled, I felt a tickle on my arm. A single black spider crawled across my skin. My heart dropped. The contagion had reached me too. I got chased by 2 autistic clowns. As the night fell, I closed the door behind me, bidding farewell to the office and the monotonous work that had consumed my day. Exhaustion seeped through my bones, longing for the sanctuary of my own home. But little did I know that this journey, this night, would weave a haunting tale that would forever haunt my dreams. Stepping onto the dimly lit streets, I noticed a peculiar figure standing in the distance. It was a clown, donned in brightly colored garments, his face hidden beneath layers of makeup. A chill ran down my spine as my instincts warned me of danger. But attributing my unease to tiredness, I continued walking, my pace quickening. As the streets grew eerily quiet, the flickering streetlights cast long, distorted shadows. Unbeknownst to me, another figure lurked in the darkness, a sinister smile stretching from ear to ear. It was another clown, identical to the first, standing mere meters away from me. Panic surged through my veins, but curiosity impelled me to confront this unfolding nightmare. "Excuse me," I managed to utter, my voice trembling. "What are you doing out here at such an hour?" The clowns remained silent, their unnerving grins unyielding. Their hollow eyes stared into oblivion, unfazed by my inquiry. Fear clenched my heart as I turned away, determined to escape the nightmarish scene. But my steps faltered as the clowns began to follow me, their slow and deliberate movements mimicking a macabre dance. I quickened my pace, darting down alleyways and taking sharp turns, hoping to lose them in the labyrinthine streets. But they were relentless in their pursuit, gaining ground with each step. My heart pounded against my chest, echoing through the desolate night, filling me with a mix of terror and desperation. The sound of their heavy footsteps echoed behind me, a haunting reminder of their presence. I could hear their muffled laughter, a twisted melody fueling my fears. Panic consumed me as I frantically searched for any sign of salvation. The city streets appeared devoid of life, the once familiar surroundings now transformed into a nightmarish playground. Every time I dared to glance back, the clowns were inches away from me, their painted faces contorted with sadistic delight. Their eerily synchronized movement revealed a malicious purpose, one that I couldn't comprehend. My legs burned with exhaustion as I stumbled upon a small park, its serenity shattered by the dark entities relentlessly hunting me down. The shadows morphed around me, elongating their reach, as though the night itself conspired against my escape. Desperation became my ally. Drawing upon every ounce of strength, I sprinted towards a nearby police station, praying for the sanctuary of its brightly lit interior. The clowns pursued me with a relentless determination, their strides impossibly quick, inches away from clasping their hands around my trembling body. With a final surge of energy, I lunged through the doors of the police station, gasping for breath, my body covered in cold sweat. The clowns skidded to a halt, their manic laughter echoing through the night. The officers inside, startled by my disheveled appearance, demanded an explanation. Breathing heavily, I recounted the unimaginable horror that had unfolded before their very eyes. But as the officers stepped outside to confront the threat, the clowns had vanished without a trace, leaving only a lingering sense of unease in their wake. Days turned into months, and the nightmare remained etched in my memory. The city became a prison, holding me captive with its lingering sense of dread. The wary looks of children at circus events, and the faint sound of distant laughter still sent shivers down my spine. I had once believed clowns to represent joy and amusement, but that night shattered all illusions.